Have you ever walked into a room already knowing who might be upset, who needs comforting, and what you need to do to keep the peace? Because you've learned that skill early in life, and you've learned it well. But here's what nobody tells you about being that good at reading everyone else. You stop reading yourself first. Then one day, you wake up exhausted and you can't figure out why. Not because you're doing too much, but because you're no longer living in line with your own values. Here is how to stop being a people pleaser and start trusting yourself. Not all at once. One dessert, one walk, one no at a time. Welcome to Lessons for Life with Grandma Kate. If you're done with people pleasing, tired of repeating the same patterns, and ready to learn what healthy relationships actually look like, you're in the right place. I get it. I was there too. At 65, I started learning the things I wish I'd known decades ago, like how to see the patterns, why we keep repeating them, and how to finally treat ourselves with the respect we always deserved. And somewhere along the way, I realized something that changed everything. When we don't understand our patterns, we pass them on. Not because we're bad parents, but because no one ever showed us anything different. That realization drives everything I do. So join my free weekly email community by signing up for my cheat sheet. See the pattern? Now what? For each episode, I'll help you name the pattern, point out how it shows up in your life, and then how you can respond differently. Find the link in the show notes or visit lessonsforlifewithgrandmakate.com. Like a lighthouse, steady and strong, let's all shine a little brighter today. People pleasing is one of the most common patterns I see in unhealthy relationships. Most people think people pleasing means you're kind, generous, or selfless. Sometimes it can look that way, but for many people, especially the family scapegoat, people pleasing isn't simply an act of kindness. It's a survival strategy. Growing up, we learned that our emotional safety often depended on keeping other people happy. We learned to read the room, anticipate people's needs, and make choices that kept everyone else comfortable. We also learned to avoid conflict because conflict often came with criticism, blame, or the silent treatment. Avoiding conflict wasn't a weakness, it was self-protection. The problem is, that strategy that protected us as children can continue shaping our choices as adults. What worked to keep you safe at 7 can quietly run your whole life at 40. And somewhere along the way, it stops being, what do I want? And starts becoming, what is expected of me? And you don't even notice it happening. Then guilt begins to take over. You wonder, am I being selfish? The decision is no longer about what aligns with your values. It's about preventing someone else's disappointment, anger, or punishment. That's why people-pleasing is so exhausting. It's not simply that you're doing too much. It's that you're constantly calculating how your choices will affect everyone else, while barely considering how they affect you. The good news is that this isn't your personality. It's what you learn to do to survive. And what was learned can be unlearned. Let me share what that looked like in my own life. Growing up as the family scapegoat, I became a really good people pleaser. So good that I often knew what people wanted way before they even knew themselves. But over time, I stopped trusting myself. I questioned my decisions. I doubted my instincts. I didn't even know what my own values were anymore because every decision started with someone else in mind. One of the biggest lies I believe was that taking care of myself was selfish. Even self-care came with guilt. But what always confused me was this. I was expected to put everyone else first, but they weren't expected to put me first. It wasn't reciprocal. My needs rarely entered the question. Eventually, I did become exhausted because I was no longer living in accordance with my own values. I've talked before about my solo trip to Europe. It became a part of rediscovering myself. What do I like to eat? What time do I want to go to bed? What does my morning routine look like? It sounds simple, but after years of living according to other people's expectations, those questions became really important. I call it living a self-led life, not a selfish life, a self-led life. A life where my choices are guided by my values instead of everyone else's expectations. And I've noticed something. Not many people like it. When you stop people-pleasing, most people become uncomfortable because the relationship changes. The old pattern isn't working anymore. But every time I stay true to my values, I build a little more trust in myself. One broad example that happens is around food. You go to someone's house for dinner, and they make a beautiful dessert with a lot of time, thought, and effort put into it, which I can appreciate. The old me would eat the dessert because I didn't want to hurt their feelings or disappoint them. But then I'd leave feeling frustrated with myself because eating it didn't align with my health goals. Now I do something different. I can appreciate the gesture. I can thank them, and I can still say, no, thank you. If they're disappointed, that's theirs to work through. It isn't my job to abandon my values so someone else can feel better. It's not about controlling other people. It's about finally giving yourself permission to make choices that align with the person you want to be. Here are 5 life lessons that have helped me work through this. I hope they will help you also. Life lesson number 1. Courage builds courage. The first time you choose yourself, it feels terrifying. But every time you do it and survive it, you build evidence and then confidence that you're safe. It gets a little easier each time, not because it stops mattering, but because you begin trusting yourself more than your fear. The first time I chose myself, it wasn't quiet. There was manipulation, deflection, the silent treatment. All the old tools came out right on schedule. But I survived. Not that it was easy, not that it went smoothly, but that I could choose myself, survive the reaction, and do it again the next time. Life lesson number 2. You can't control someone else's reaction. You can't control how someone reacts to your needs. You can only control whether you abandon your own values to keep the peace. Walking is my meditation time. Always has been and always will be. It's my time alone with my thoughts. But my husband loves to talk when we walk together, and that doesn't leave room for the quiet I need. For years, I went on walks with him, feeling resentful because I wasn't getting the alone time I needed. So one day I said to him, I'm going to start walking by myself. And I explained why. Oh, he was huffy. But that is his reaction to work through. It isn't evidence that I've done anything wrong. And life lesson number 3. Appreciation and boundaries can exist together. You can genuinely appreciate someone's kindness and still say no. Gratitude doesn't obligate you to abandon your values. That's one of the biggest traps people pleasers fall into. This is exactly what happened with the dessert. I was grateful for the time and effort, and I still chose not to eat it because it didn't align with my values. Both can be true at the same time. And life lesson number 4. Pause before you say yes. Before you say yes to something, pause and ask yourself, is this decision based on my values or am I trying to avoid conflict? That one pause changes everything. For example, say someone asked you to cancel your plans at the last minute to help with theirs yet again. The old you would say yes before you even finished hearing the request. Now you pause. You ask, do I actually want to do this? Or am I just afraid of what will happen if I say no? Sometimes the answer is still yes, but it's your decision to say yes and not your fear. And life lesson number 5, self-trust grows one decision at a time. You don't wake up one morning trusting yourself. You build self-trust. Every decision you make according to your values instead of your conditioning becomes evidence that you can trust yourself. I didn't stop being a people pleaser overnight. It was saying no to one dessert because it aligned with my goals. It was taking one solo trip to Europe even when people said spouses travel together. It was choosing a bedtime routine that worked for me instead of someone else's. When you make small decisions based on your values, one after another, one day you'll look back and realize you trust yourself more. You trust yourself to make decisions that align with who you are, not just what makes someone else comfortable. Kids don't learn by listening to what we say. They learn by watching what we do. When your child hears you say, "Thank you for thinking of me, but no thank you," to a piece of cake, they learn that gratitude and boundaries can exist in the same sentence. When they see you take your walk alone, even though someone else wanted your company, they learn that having your own needs doesn't make you selfish and that you matter too. And perhaps most importantly, they learn that someone else's disappointment isn't an emergency they have to fix. You can teach your kids this early, in small everyday moments, so they don't have to unlearn it later in life. If your child doesn't want to share a toy with a friend or would rather have some quiet time than hang out with the family, you might say, "It's okay to say no, if that's what feels right to you now." That one sentence teaches a child that kindness doesn't mean ignoring themselves. It teaches them that their feelings matter too. No one taught me those lessons when I was growing up. I had to learn them as an adult. But that's the beautiful part. We have the opportunity to model something different for the next generation. You spent years learning to read everyone else, their moods, their needs, what would keep the peace. And somewhere along the way, you stopped reading yourself. It's what you had to become to survive in your family environment. And what you learn to survive, you can unlearn. It won't always be easy when you choose yourself. Sometimes it's the silent treatment. Sometimes it's a huff about taking a walk alone. Sometimes it's a disgusted look over a piece of cake you didn't eat. But that's all right. You don't need anyone to agree with you to trust yourself. You just need to make the next decision aligned with your values. One dessert, one walk, one no at a time. Whether you're starting to understand yourself more clearly or learning to do things differently, you're building the skills to grow into the person you're meant to be. Learning is important, but real change happens when you use what you've learned. That's why I've created a cheat sheet, See the Pattern Now What, for today's episode. Join my free weekly email community. I'll help you name the pattern, point out how it shows up in your life, and how you can respond differently. Find the link in the show notes or visit lessonsforlifewithgrandmakate.com. And if you want more life lessons like this, be sure to follow Lessons for Life with Grandma Kate on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If this episode resonated with you, there's a link in the show notes to show your appreciation. Either way, I'm grateful for you being here. If no one has told you lately, everything will be okay. Tomorrow is a new day, and with it comes new hope. As I conclude this episode, I must state that this podcast is designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. While I bring my experience as a parent and grandparent, it's essential that you know I am not a licensed therapist. This podcast is not a substitute for professional advice from a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Got it? Awesome. Until next time, what is one thing you are grateful for?